Welcome to the Place of Rest, where our aim is to give you language that helps you displace the growing confusion, chaos, and dis-ease of our times. My name is Jonathan Boyce, and it's my pleasure to bring to you today's episode. Virginia and author Patrice Karst discuss the power of love simply communicated in her book, The Invisible String. We hope you enjoy today's conversation.
Patrice, welcome. I can't tell you how happy I am to chat with you.
Thank you so much. It's exciting to be here with you guys.
Invisible heartstrings.
Invisible string.
Invisible
The invisible
string.
Yeah.
I added the heart.
They are heartstrings though. But
Invisible
I just
string.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you, when my little granddaughter pulled out this book and said, Mimi, I don't have to be afraid. Because look, Mommy bought me this book and she said, we have an invisible string that connects us. And when those little words came out, those sweet words came out of her mouth, I thought, yes, that is a law of nature. It's universal to all man. It's obvious. It's common sense, right? And it speaks to our natural affection. And those three things, Patrice, are at the heart of rest. That's our litmus test. Is this a universal thing that we're dealing with, right? Does the thing we're dealing with, good, bad, indifferent, promising or not, whatever, compromised or not, this is our litmus test. Is it a law of nature, meaning it's universal, common to us all, self-evident truth? Is it obvious? And does it speak to our natural affection as human beings? And when she used those words, invisible string, I thought that's what connects us to you, Lord, to each other, and to life. So it's so beautiful. Tell us all about it. I can't wait to hear all about you. Tell us about your book. Just tell us about this.
Okay. And thank you for that. And please give her a big hug from me. And yes, these are universal truths. And, obviously there's so much I could tell you about my publishing story, my life story, but
Integrate that a little bit. Tell us.
So I wrote The Invisible String when my son was just beginning to attend school. And I was a single working mom. And he had very bad separation anxiety. And so he would cry when I would leave him. And then I would have a horrible day because I'd left him crying. And it was just a mess. We were a mess. One day, as I was leaving and he was beginning to cry, I said, Eli, just tug on the invisible string. And he was like, what do you mean? What invisible string? And I explained that we have this string that would connect us all day long. And that if he missed me, he could just tug on it and I would feel it in my heart. And then I would tug it back and he would feel it in his heart. And that we'd be together all day long until I picked him up again when he'd actually see me. And literally, voila, he literally just stopped having crying fits. The separation anxiety went far, far away. It disappeared. And then all his little friends wanted to know if there really was an invisible string. And does it go to my Uncle Enrique? And does it go to my hamster? And does it go to my grandma who lives in China? And of course the answer was always yes, 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 yes. It goes everywhere. And I saw the reaction that these children were having to this tangible explanation of love and connection, an invisible string. And I knew I had something really special. So I wrote it as a children's book. I had already written and published a couple of other books in the spiritual self-help world, but I wrote this as a children's book. Found a publisher, and really the rest is history. I would have been happy if I had sold 500 copies of the book, if I had known that 500 families were, getting the comfort and the relief of realizing they were connected. But it went completely out of control. The Invisible String is on a mission of love, a global mission of love around the world, apparently. And the book had its own destiny that was far above and beyond anything I could have ever dreamt up. We've sold well over 2 million copies right now. It's published in 21 different languages, and it shows no signs of ever stopping.
The world needs to understand that universal principle that is obvious, self-evident, and speaks to our natural affections. And I believe it was inspired by
It
God
was
for you to share with humanity.
for sure. My very first book I ever wrote, God Made Easy, has been out of print for a long time, but yeah, I just got a new publishing deal. It'll be coming out next year. I woke up from a dream and wrote that book in 1 hour, a little book about God. So yeah, when God wants to use us as an instrument, whether we're painters or dancers or writers or school teachers or therapists or, whatever we do, God makes the doors open for that gift of ours to be able to be shared. And that's what happened with the invisible string, which then went on to get a lot of new siblings, the invisible leash, which is basically the same principle, but it's for our animal. It's when we lose a beloved pet
Mm.
and to just realize that we're still always connected to that animal. And that's become one of the number one pet loss grief books for children. And then there's The Invisible Web.
Well, it's interesting because he identifies himself as a triune being, spirit, soul, and body. And the Trinity of Trinities created time, space, and matter for the spirit, the soul, and the body of a man. So when you start looking at the Trinitarian constitution of everything that makes up and sustains life, it's really remarkable. It's not a blind faith, if you will. Actually, it's evidence in every fiber of our being and every pattern of our thinking in the anatomy of what holds everything together. And I loved your book so much because my mind instantly went to world religions are about what man does to reach God. But Christianity is about the one thing God did to reach man, and he made us in his image with this invisible string that is undeniable, and it manifests in our Constitution. For some reason, the title, the response of my daughter, the universal response I can only imagine this book has had. I just knew intuitively because I came to faith through reason, through science. But as I've aged and as I've become more curious, right? The older I get, the more curious I become. I think, wow, your fingerprint, God, are everywhere. They're in our very constitution. How we reason, how we process, even the anatomy of the soul when you think about it is the mind, the heart, the will, the conscience, the feelings of a person that emotes. Emotions are a part of the central nervous system, right? But feelings are a function of the soul. So when you think about it, your little son, you spoke to the very anatomy of his soul and you transformed the way he thought about being apart from you. And as a man thinks in his heart, we're told in these ancient documents, certainly in the scriptures, as a man thinks in his heart, so he is. And we see the manifestation of that in science. We document that, right? We have a data-driven, evidence-based program here at R.E.S.T, but we see evidence of everything your book talks about manifested in the anatomy of a person, in the narrative of how God explains himself. And it's such a beautiful story of hope and redemption and life. We can't even be separated from each other by anything, really.
That's right. Well, love is the strongest force in all the universe, and it traverses time and space,
Yes.
which is why the book is also the number one children's grief book. Even though there's only one page in the book that alludes to physical separation by death, that one page changed everything. And it sprung a bunch of other books, which we can talk about if you want, or we can just,
I'd love to talk about all the other books. And I want to also say that I appreciated the simplicity of the message. I find myself often in situations where I have to make an appeal for these universal principles that are self-evident and address and speak to our natural affections. And people are so resistant to being told and being pushed and being evangelized, or I don't know. People are so resistant to things that are so natural to us all and obvious. when in fact we have this beautiful reality we can share, and that is our common humanity. We all know something's broken inside, something's frail, something's limiting. But when we can access something as beautiful as a thought, which is what you helped your son grasp, it literally transformed him physiologically in that very moment. It literally, that thought transformed his anatomy. That's crazy.
Yep. Well, such is the power of love, right?
Yes, that's right. What has surprised you the most?
On this journey, on the publishing journey,
Yes.
the fact that there that this very simple list of concepts could have blown up in this way is it blows my mind. I get letters from all over the world every week from people of every path, every
Yeah.
walk of life, all telling me how this book has and the other books have changed their lives. So I think that's the biggest surprise is that, when you put something out into the world, you don't know what kind of response it's going to have. And in this case, I believe that God wanted this message to be heard and
Do too.
in this very simple way. And then I also have a book that just came out, which is called, and let me grab it. It's called How Jackson Found His Joy Again. And
How Jackson found his. I love that.
yeah, and it's a beautiful book that does in the same way that the invisible string uses the metaphor of string to represent love. In How Jackson Found His Joy Again, it's all about a little boy who was chock full of colors, but the world started to take his colors away. They started to fade, and he felt very gray, when he heard about sad stuff on the news or when his best friend moved away and his hamster died all in the same week. He lost his color. He was gray. And then he started to realize he went to his therapist at school counselor, who told him to go look for the colors in the world and see how they made him feel. So each spread of the book, a different color comes back to Jackson. When he sees the blues of the ocean and the sky and the sea all swirling their blues together, and the spray of sea and sand, blue comes back. And then when he takes a hike with mom in the forest and all the green, lush trees, green returns, and on and on and on until he gets all the colors of his rainbow back. And it just shows children and adults that sometimes life seems to almost try to whisk away our colors. So many sad things happen, but those colors are inherent. They're within us. They're God given. They are our birthright, and they will always come back if we just look for them. So it's a book that
Yeah,
you
they're there for the taking, aren't they? All the colors, they're there for the taking, no matter what's happened to us.
That's exactly right. So if anyone's feeling gray out there, this too shall pass. Just go look for your colors again, and they'll be right there.
I just love your work. I love your heart. I love your easygoing disposition. And there's nothing complex about you, and just raw and real and natural. And I just want to express my deepest appreciation
My gosh, thank
for
you
you.
so much.
Yeah, your heart, your authenticity, just your desire to bring hope to humanity
Well, I
is a
just
beautiful, beautiful thing.
you should know. Thank you so much for all that. But I came from a very abused childhood. I had a tremendous amount of suffering and pain growing up, and I just think it's fascinating how, they say that we write and we teach whatever our art or our gift is that which we most need within ourselves. And I think that the reason why I write the books that I do is I tackle big subjects, very big subjects, loss, grief, loneliness, sadness, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I guess I'm giving back to the little girl inside of me who would have been so comforted if she had had these books growing up, to understand some of these really hard things. Children are incredibly smart creatures. For example, death. When I first wrote the book and I went to the publisher, he loved the book. He said, I want to publish it, but I don't want there to be a page in it that talks about heaven. I don't want, the children in this case in the invisible string ask their mom, does the string reach Uncle Brian in heaven? And mom says, of course, even there. And the publisher didn't want any mention of heaven or death in the book. And I fought for it because I said, we must keep it in there. We have to let the children know that this power of love, that this invisible string isn't just limited to this earth. So I'm glad I fought for it, because that one page, that one word, heaven, on that one page in the book is what turned it into the number one grief book.
God says we're all his children, right? And the fingerprint bears witness of our uniqueness, of our authenticity, of our peculiarities, if you will. And it's such a beautiful thing to perhaps expand our view of reality. And I think your work does that in a practical view, perhaps, of how we show up for life and how we see ourselves and others. You said something interesting. You said it's a well-known fact that we give what we need. We create what we need. We really spend a lot of time thinking about the things that we need. And I think there's a measure of truth to that. I would just add, and I welcome your comments on this, that we're perfected, we're told in the scriptures, through the things we suffer. A man is refined when he's pressed.
Absolutely.
And he's put through the furnace. And I'm tired of this view of mental health, because now we've managed to categorize and isolate and divide and create all these compartments for people to fit in, cubes, boxes they can never escape. And I reject that notion on so many levels. And I love your story. I just wanted to interject, is although I had anticipated that you'd experienced measures of suffering because of the nature of your work, and the authenticity and the voice was so clear to me. But it wasn't just, in my opinion, that you wrote from what you needed. You're sharing what you've learned.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the beauty of suffering. There is the refinement that I think transpires for the individual, but the enrichment for the rest of us through your journey is immeasurable. And I wanted to just again thank you so much.
Oh, thank
But
you.
that is a beautiful thing. So yes, we give what we need because we know the value of what we didn't have, or what was lost, or what was destroyed in our lives. You have a different level of appreciation of that invisible string, ultimately connected to God, that transcends time. And that's why I think it's so powerful. But what are your thoughts about that? It's not just giving what you need, but the beauty of what you've learned.
Well, I think that all artists, almost every artist that is a depthful artist, has had some measure of suffering. It just seems to be the nature of the beast, I guess. I don't know if that's the right expression, but
It is.
when we turn suffering into art, then it sanctifies and makes holy that which we have suffered, that we have not suffered in vain, but we are using that suffering to bring more light to a very suffering planet. So I am so grateful for all the people that have turned their suffering into greater good for the rest of us. And I don't think that the people I've known in my life that have had just easy breezy lives, God bless them. I mean, they had a nice ride on the earth, but there's not, my experience has been that there's not the same level of depth. When I'm suffering and I'm talking to someone that has not really known suffering in that way, there's sort of a glazed blankness that, they can't relate. But when I'm talking to someone that they too have suffered, we meet in this place of knowingness.
It's a different realm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It is. And which is not to say I don't recommend suffering. I don't say go out and try to suffer so you can write better books, or whatever it is. But when we are given what we are given, to try to find what that spiritual thread, that spiritual invisible string is, why are we going through this thing, and how can I still sing the praises of God even while I'm in this temporary darkness? And the temporariness, I think, is a really big piece. If I didn't believe that there was a great, great light out there, it'd be really hard when it's a gray, rainy, cold day. if I were to feel like that's the reality, that's how it always is, it would be very sad. But I always can remind myself, or I try to remind myself, that the sun is still there and it will come out again. And when it does and everything lights up and the colors are back, it's a glorious celebration.
Beautiful. Do you know, recently I was with a cancer patient and preparing her to go home, and the beauty of that transition, right? Finding beauty in that transition. And I was praying while I was speaking to her, and something occurred to me. Life, a universal law of nature, irrefutable, not disputable, common to all, whether we've thought about it or not, is that life is all about beginnings. God says he had foreknowledge of us before the beginning of time. And we all have deja vu moments that are bizarre. And then we see them happening. Well, that makes sense. If God had foreknowledge of us before the beginning of time, and he knows every hair in my head, he knows me by name, that means that I have a knowing inside of me. And at conception, when that little sperm hits that little egg, light surrounds the egg. And birth is what? Light.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what happens when we leave time, people step into and universally record seeing a light. On the other side of that light, sometimes there's some other more complicated things, for sure. But at the end of the day, the Lord revealed to me, do you know, it's all about beginnings with me. It's all about light. It's all about life. And it's all about liberty, your capacity to self-govern. Articulate, discover these things, be curious, discover these things so you can live free. And I love that you had the guts to show up and tell the publisher, no, this is an essential part of my book, the discussion about heaven, because that's where we come from. That's what we're told. And we come from a place, and call it what you want. We're coming from somewhere, and we're definitely going somewhere else. And there's lots of first-hand accounts of both of those things. And I want to invite these children with integrity to experience reality. And I just think you did it so beautifully, Patrice. I believe that God gave you inspiration, and you heard a whisper from the heart of God, and you brought something beautiful to us. So thank you for fighting for that page.
Well, children, you're very welcome. It's my honor and pleasure and joy and blessing in life to have written this book and the others. But children do know about death, whether
Yes, of course.
they see a dead bird on the trail, they hear about someone on the news that's died, a grandparent passes. Children do and will experience death, and the sooner we can begin that conversation, I think the better.
It's a part of life. Death
Right.
is life.
That's right.
There is very well recorded, and obviously I've been with many, many, many people on hospice, and I got to tell you, it's pretty remarkable. It kind of gets me excited about what's on the other side of all this, because there's something there, and it's beautiful. And
It sure is.
sometimes it's really dark for some people. I've heard both accounts, but I think we chase the truth of the whole thing, and we can have meaningful conversations about all this, and you just got us started on it one.
Well, thank you, Virginia. Thank you for having me today. It was my pleasure to talk to you. And just anyone that's listening out there, the universal truths never change, and love is.
Most powerful force on earth.
Yes, it is.
God bless you, Patrice.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We hope listening to this episode has brought you closer to experiencing the freedom of wholeness and healing. If you have questions or comments about today's episode, or for updates about R.E.S.T, please visit our Instagram or Facebook at The Place of R.E.S.T. If you would like more information about Virginia, or to support and join the cause of R.E.S.T, please go to theplaceofrest.com/donate or call 949-289-5935. Thank you for listening to Rest with Virginia Dixon. We'll see you next week.